資源の呪い化、決定的な政策課題と題しましてプレゼンテーションを行っていただきます。Are you ready? Okay, thank you very much for the preparation. ということで、so please welcome Mr. Shinji Asanuma. We are all here.
Good morning, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to thank Dr. Hosori for inviting me to this important meeting of specialists in resource development. I must confess that I was puzzled when I was invited because I'm not an expert. I'm not a specialist in natural resources development. But at the same time, I came to be very much delighted at this chance because I have a message which I would like to convey to you. And this is the message. Doesn't move. You are all specialists in the affairs of developing natural resources in your respective countries. And it's quite obvious that rich endowment of natural resources, its exploitation and development are really enormous blessing for your country. You know, it enhances national income, export, and government revenue, and through all these, it contributes towards your country's development in an enormous way. But then, at the same time, the rich natural resource endowment can be a curse. It is often that you find many countries with rich endowment of resources get into troubles. And oftentimes, these troubles lead to a disaster. And why so? I mean, it should be the natural resources should be enormous blessing for the country, and yet it can be turned into a curse and a disaster for the economy. Why so? Now, the main reason is that it causes the overspending and overborrowing by the government and by the country, resulting in enormous debt problem. And sometimes one comes to the stage where one has to declare default of one's debt. Now, for that reason, it is often called that, you know, this is a resource curse or resource disaster. Now, the secret, why so, lies in this chart, which I'm showing to you. Now, this is a graph which shows the composite price index of metals and minerals compiled by the World Bank. There is a probably you are all well aware that there is a famous pink sheet which is published from time to time to show the price movements. And this is the composite price index of all metals and minerals. And as you can see, the volatility you see of the price level is really enormous. This is from 1960 to 2021, based on the index, which is based on 2010. And as you can see, the price level doubles and price level halves. And it's enormous gyration. And as I said, this is the composite index. And so when you start looking at the individual commodities like copper, nickel, and so forth, volatility is even greater than this one. Now, this is the reason why resource endowment, which should be a blessing, can sometimes be turned into a curse. Now, let me show why. Now, one can think of a resource the resource curse scenario in very sort of easy way. You know, as the country's mineral resources are exploited and developed, and when they start sort of producing the income generations, then the weight of the mineral sector in the economy increases. And at that point, we have many actors on the scene. We have usually foreign investors who invest only when the world demand is high. They are really cold-blooded enterprises which wouldn't do anything other than for profitable motivations. And then we have local businesses who are engaged in related businesses, and related businesses also develop along with the mineral sector development. And then we have the government. Now, the government revenue will increase, and the government will start spending on infrastructure, which of course is necessary for mineral sector development. Transportation, port facilities, roads, railways, all kinds of things have to be developed. And then the government uses the money which comes from the minerals development for that purpose. And then on top of that, since the government revenue increases, the government starts spending on social programs such as education, health, and of course all necessary spendings. And then on the scene, we have politicians. Politicians are very active. Politicians, if you look at the composition of any parliament, you would realize that many of them actually represent business interests. And of course, there are politicians who represent the interest relating to social programs, such as health and education. There is no doubt about that. So this is the scene in which the minerals development takes place. Now, as I have shown in the graph, the price gyrates quite radically. And these cyclical movements of prices are caused by the global demand and supply imbalances either way. And sometimes not just regular imbalances of supply and demand, but also strong structural sort of changes would cause these enormous volatilities. We often sort of use this word super commodity cycle, which was in the past few decades caused by the emerging market economies, especially China and India. Rise of China and India in the world economy causes enormous increases in demand for raw materials. And that is the cause for this commodity cycle. And therefore, if the growth of these big economies like India and China become moderate, then the price movements also become moderate. Now, on top of that, looking forward to the future, we have this green transition, which we talked about. Now, this is an enormous change in terms of the valuation of mineral resources your countries have. Look at coal, for example. Look at sort of coal mines in Mongolia, coal deposits in Mongolia. Very valuable. And that output from the coal mines support the Mongolian economy in a big way. The coal products being exported to China mainly. Now, if we move forward to the middle of this century, or even latter part of the century, coal deposits will have lost much value. Today, very valuable resources, very valuable assets will be priceless, will have little price, will carry little price by then. So enormous changes in the valuations of the mineral resources portfolio will take place in the coming 2-3 decades. And that causes enormous volatility once again in the price level of all these minerals and other related resources. And one doesn't need to talk about geopolitical conflicts as a reason for additional causes for volatile changes in prices. We know, we are seeing every day that this Russia-Ukraine war and Israeli-Hamas war and also the smaller scale wars taking place in the Sahel region are causing changes impacting the natural resource market. So we can't moderate this enormous volatility in natural resource prices ever in any practical way. In other words, this roller coaster which we have today will not become, realistically speaking, will not become a smooth monorail ride. Now, in that situation then, what happens to your country? On the upswing of this enormous change, prosperity becomes the word, the word, and everybody is happy. And some sort of euphoria is likely to set in. Everybody starts feeling that this is a normal situation which will last forever. And then everybody, and by everybody I mean the government, the enterprises, households, everybody starts spending as if there is no tomorrow. Spending binge will happen. And then, in the midst of that spending binge, the hotbed for corruption, which is the government spending, becomes even hotter. The government has politicians. Politicians have various interest groups, and these groups would compete for funding this project or that project, and political pressures will mount, and the spendings as a result will really increase beyond reasonable levels. But then, what goes up comes down, must come down. And when this upswing reaches the peak, which using the name of the economist who describes it in a nice way, we often call it the Minsky moment. Minsky moment. We reach the Minsky moment, and then the downswing starts happening. We have seen in the graph this downswing, almost halving the level of the price. And then growth, which has been, in some cases, beyond 10% for many years. Look at Mongolia. In a couple of years, the growth rate reached even 14%, well beyond 10%. And that comes to a stop. And everybody's income, the business, households, the government, everybody's income gets depressed. But then that situation, the people would start clamoring for spendings by the government to offset this decreased income. And that's the crucial sort of thing. The governments would be asked, would be pressured to continue spending as if the revenue stream is constant. すいません。ありがとうございます。はい。すいません。Now, the end result of these government spendings, while the government revenue goes down, is this twin deficits. Fiscal deficit as well as unemployment deficits. These deficits start showing up in a big way, and the gaps must be somehow financed, and they are financed by the borrowers. And the debt goes up, and sustainability of that debt, and that is the continued government capacity to repay debt, comes into doubt. And then the difficulty sort of arises. And that's the scenario which is repeatedly seen in many countries in resource sort of development oriented. Now, but this resource curse is not inevitable. it's not a destiny, it's not inevitable. One can sort of avoid that. There are ways out. So, what are the ways out? One has to increase the restraining powers to curb the government excesses. As we have seen, it's the government which causes this. And therefore, the government excesses are curbed in some way, then we don't need to face this resource curse or resource disaster. And what are the ways of curbing government excesses? There are ways. One way would be to establish very robust fiscal rules and laws. For example, you can come up with a law which says the government deficit should not be more than should always be less than 3%, or the total national debt should be always less than 60% of GDP. Now, to say these things is easy, but to really enact these and then hold the government strictly to it is a very difficult process. Oftentimes the government breaks its own laws or changes the laws, because to write these things in the Constitution would be very difficult, because it really robs you of the flexibility in economic management. So there have to be laws, but the laws can be changed by the government. So you have to sometimes establish independent fiscal institutions, which is independent of the executive branch of the government and reports to the parliament. And that is one way. And then also, there is another way, and that is establishing what one can call National Wealth Fund. This is basically a saving sort of account for the nation for the rainy days. When the upswing comes, you save money for the downswing. Now, once again, this is very difficult because all these are institutional developments, and it takes time, and one has to come up with all kinds of devices so that the government doesn't violate its own rules. Also, one can establish anti-corruption commission. I talked about the hotbed of corruption, and anti-corruption commission should be once again independent of the executive branch or the judicial branch of the government. It has to be an independent institution. Now, these are very difficult. It's easy to say, but very difficult to really put in practice. But then the key is to create these number of independent power bases for the government decision. Now, everybody sort of knows that your contributions to the development of mineral resources, mineral sector, is extremely valuable for the country's development. There's no doubt about it. And in order not to waste your valuable efforts, I would like to ask you to pay attention to the uses of the benefits, the contributions you make by various interest groups in the country. Otherwise, the blessing can be easily turned into a curse for the nation. I think as specialists in development of natural resources. It is your responsibility to see to it that your results, the results of your efforts, not be wasted and turned into a curse and disaster. And this is the message which I would like to give you. Good luck to you all, and thank you.